always find the one that says, oh, I worked in a district and I worked in this employment place, or I worked wherever and I was treated fine. Well, check your level of power. Check if you are a threat to anyone because you are better than, or you are deserving of what you need, and then come back with the stories from the people who actually matter in that situation.
Yeah, so this is a common issue. This is a common issue in education as well as the corporate world, although I do believe, just in my certainly more work that's been done within the corporate world, and education, I believe, is just coming to understand these issues really only recently. And I'll speak just for Ohio. The Ohio Department of Education has really put equity at the center of its work. And I know that's a lot of the work that you'd been doing all along, you know. And so I'm curious about, what is it that, why do you think that is in education? What is it that has, I mean, I kind of have the answer, but why is it that education has been so slow to really begin to understand the needs of its customers, its students? You know, we've had books after book talk about this, but why do you believe that, Rhonda, in your experience?
Well, because I think there's a complete, it's systematic, it's systemic. It is a non-accountability piece that districts are not responsible for. Let me share with you this. So I was in a district where I was the first ever African-American employee ever, like no custodians, no secretaries, bus drivers, no one. I was their first employee. And I can tell you though, that they were ready and open and valued diversity. Even though there were not a lot of students of color, I would say out of 15 to 1,800 kids, maybe 10, but they were ready and they knew that they wanted to be a part of that movement. And they were so gracious to me and supportive to me. Mm-hmm. So I thrived in that environment. I still, to this day, go to eat out every year with the administrators I was with, because they valued me and they actually wanted it. And because there's an accountability piece that is missing, districts are allowed to say, oh, you know what, we had a training, so yeah, we're working on diversity. But there's no one to check, what have you actually done? What are you going to do? And then lots of districts end up putting the few African-American or Black or minority people in charge of that whole transformation. And that is just not a good support system to work under. So I think that accountability is the key, and everything is systemic that goes with that.
So you mentioned that you had an amazing time at this district. You said you felt included and valued. What are other things that you felt that you knew that you mattered and that your voice was heard? What were some of the key things that you know, these are obvious things for some, but I want to make certain that because some districts might be hearing this. And so I would love to be able to hear what your experience was in that district, being the first.
Yeah, it was just a general respect. You know, I know when you do your RISE program for schools, the first thing you taught us and talked about is respect. And when you go into a situation and everyone is there and respects everyone, it changes the whole way that a person is received. So I can give you some examples. You know, I would sit at the table at this district that had not seen my face or any faces like it, but I felt like I was an equal at the table. I would make a suggestion. I would, you know, challenge something, and I was treated as if a person at the table. And you just know what that feels like, to be valued, because when you're devalued so much, you definitely know what it looks like when you're valued. And these people had just bought in. And you know, we had our own set of problems. For instance, I think they still have it. I'm going to guess they still have it. One of the big challenges that we had was they have an auction. They auction off their student council members or something like that. And I just remember with people that are really dear friends of mine now, having a debate of saying, oh, we don't auction people. Like, I'm not gonna be a part of this, and I don't want you to do it. Because I couldn't even believe it. I was like, they auctioning people here? And it was a fundraiser that they had done for a very long time.
I'm glad that we could.
However, I did know the spirit of which they were coming from, but I also wanted them to know how offensive it is if they're looking at it from my perspective. And we debated, they listened though. No one was mad later because, Rhonda said, no, I'm not gonna be in favor of that. However, we were able to come to a respectful end to our conversation, instead of it being one of, she's this, she's one of them, she's a troublemaker. It didn't happen. So being able to speak freely, have critical conversations with people, and for them to understand the need for change and the need for what this person needs, and to look outside of themselves. And that's what a lot of people that I've had in contact with, unfortunately, that district was not the norm for districts that I've worked with.
Yeah, so you are basically talking about the, folks listening to the lived experiences of people of color, which is something that I find a lot of people are dismissing, and really as if there's something wrong or with that person. So I appreciate that, because that is just one of several things that districts can do in order for them to value their individuals, especially if they are the first time having a person of color or a Black person to be in a leadership position. So,
absolutely.
I want to ask you, so there's this idea that where are the Black educators? I had some conversations with some other Black educators, and they were saying in their districts, which are predominantly, Black districts, they see more people of color, that there are more people of color, but there still is a cry among a lot of districts that there aren't enough Black people and people of color in these positions. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in that regard, in the shortage that we're talking about. What is your thought on that?
It goes back to what I talked about earlier, about if you actually want to do something, or if you're actually saying you want to do something. There are Black educators there. Although there's not in great numbers, districts that want them, that go after them and know the value in having people of color in their building, those are the people that actually do it. I mean, and a lot of times, just kind of a sidebar, a lot of times people say, okay, there's no Black educators. Well, you're telling me you can't hire them to be a part of your school community? You're not going to have a Black bus driver, or a secretary, or a cafeteria worker, or a hall monitor, or a custodian? We're not doing that. And where are you actually looking? It's funny. One district that I worked in, they're going to go to a job fair because they're going to increase diversity, right? So this is great. So they take me because they take me. So we get there, and there's already a list where at the university where the students that were education students had signed up to be interviewed by our district. And I just kind of scanned the list, my list of who I had filled up for the day. And I thought, why'd I even come? Because I know nobody that looks like me is on this list, and I think that's what I'm here for. Yeah. So what I did, I think that it would say they were scheduled at like half-hour intervals for the interviews. So what I did, I got up, I walked around the arena that they had for the job fair. I walked around, and I found people that looked like me, and I said, why aren't you applying to our district? Why didn't you sign up? And so what I did is I started taking people on the 15-minute mark, and I started filling it up with people that look like me. Now, I took it further. I interviewed them, and I stayed in contact with a lot of them. I invited them to the district I was working at, spent my own money, gave them lunch, that type of thing. If you look for something, you'll find it. If you're pretending to look for something, you won't find it. I've suggested to some districts that I've worked in before, I said, hey, every Black church in America has church announcements. Go there, tell them you're hiring. And that doesn't happen. So that shows me that people aren't looking for what they say they're looking for, because a district that never had one African-American employee in their history, they found me. Yeah. And so it's if you're looking, you'll get what you're looking for.
Right. It takes intention and it takes association with organizations who are trying to make that happen. And so you hit it right on the nail that we have to really make certain that we are making a concerted effort to look
Yeah.
at people that aren't like them. So what I do know is that representation matters, right? So you've been in districts where you've been the only person of color, Black woman in these predominantly, when I say white districts, I'm talking about staff, because the students are students of color in those seats. You know, what is your personal, I mean, there's so much research on this about how having more Black people and if they're Black students there, that representation matters to them both academically and both socially. You've done enough work, you've done enough research to know how that impacts them. Can you share some stories and thoughts and ideas from your own personal experience? Because you are an expert. You hope
Yeah.
you're an expert. So tell us what you think.
Right. Starting off, and I kind of alluded, I didn't say it, but I lived in Pennsylvania until I was 15, about 20 miles out of Pittsburgh. We were not on the map. Our city was not on the map. We didn't have sidewalks. Mail didn't go to our houses. It was kind of out in the sticks. And my experience of being schooled and going to school and not seeing any adults that looked like me, I admired teachers because I wanted to be a teacher and I liked what they did, but I didn't have any connections to any of those teachers. So until I was 15, I never had more than 14 Black people in a building, like the whole building, the kids and the teachers. I never had a Black teacher. I moved to Toledo when I was 15, went to DeVilbiss High School, and it was the most diverse, amazing place ever. And there is where I started to have some African-American teachers, and it changed everything. It changed everything when you can connect to someone. And people, how people say, Diana, when they, color doesn't matter, and I love all kids. That is true. But for a kid to be able to walk into my office as an administrator and say, hey, did you see Kirk Franklin's coming to Detroit? And I'll be like, yeah, I'm going there, I'm there. For me, for them to have that connection where they could say that, where if they had a white administrator, well, first of all, they wouldn't go in there with that kind of conversation. But if they went and, hey, there's a Kirk Franklin concert, and lots of times I'm like, who is that? And I don't know. And just to have that connection. So I saw it a lot, because kids are striving to see people that look like them so that they can be role models for them. I had kids, a lot of kids, that call me auntie at school. They call me auntie at school, or come to talk to me about things that they felt like I had been through. They love their teachers. The last district I was at had an amazing staff that tried very hard to build connections with their students. My connection was just a different connection. So it didn't mean they didn't connect with the kids at all, but it was different. It was different when someone feels comfortable enough with you to call you, mom or auntie or that type of thing. It just gives you a feeling of comfort and home. And that's what a lot of students need. Not saying that they don't have that at home, but when they're away from their parents, they're away from their own home, they need to feel comfortable so that they can learn and grow from people that can share experiences with them.
Yeah, I hope districts that are listening to this, because we are in this era of the systemic racism happening across the globe, and education is at the center point of all of this. And I hope that administrators that are listening to this will take this into consideration, because here's the thing. When you don't feel valued and you don't feel respected and you don't feel like your voice matters, people leave.
Yeah.
There have, I wrote a blog here recently called "Where Are All the Black Teachers, Principals, and Educational Staff?" And I quoted an article, and I cited actually 5 reasons why educators leave. They experience an agnostic work culture that leaves them feeling unwelcome and invisible. They feel undervalued because they take on more than their fair share of responsibility. They feel like they're deprived of agency and autonomy in their schools because of an inability to tailor their teaching to the population, the students they serve. And they feel they are navigating unfavorable work conditions which lack support needed for them to grow as professional. And lastly, they bear the high costs of being a teacher of color, which takes a toll on them financially and psychologically. And in hearing you, I know that you felt those experiences as well in the districts that you've been in, because you've been in several. Just so
I've been in a lot.
Mhm.
27 years, you go a lot of places.
Yes, you've been a lot of places. And so, what suggestions can you give us? Like 3 suggestions, and then I'm going to check Facebook to see if there's any comments. But what would be the top 3 or 4 or 5 suggestions you have for districts when you are bringing in people? What are the top 3 or 4 things you suggest that they do?
Okay, the number one thing is buy into it or leave it alone. That's my big thing. If you don't want to diversify, if you don't want to treat people with respect and you don't want to value them as a person because they're a person of color and you want to maintain your privilege and your power, don't hire them. Then that erases. There's plenty of districts that I've seen that have no desire to diversify and they don't pretend to. So let them be. So I just say that that's number one. Leave people, just don't do it if you don't want to do it. But secondly, some things you could do to be supportive.
Yeah.
Pulling people together.
Mm-hmm.
At one of the districts I was at, there were maybe, I don't know, I think I'm going high with saying 15 out of 400 employees were people of color. Well, Black people, I should say, because there's a huge difference in a lot of that. That's a lot of other discussion. But there were some that I never even met. I met some, Diana, you did some work at a district I was with. I met some through you. And I have been in that district for 13 years.
Yeah.
A lady shows up, I'm like, who are you? And she's like, who are you?
Yeah.
So giving opportunity. And then we ended up having lots of conversation. There needs to be a built-in support system. There has to be a support system for those that are there. And I think my number one point leads to other points of when you recognize that you want to have Black people, people of color in any organization that you have, especially schools. You have to give them latitude, support, and value. So, you know, going back to the example I said about the auction that they were having for people, sitting down and listening and being willing to take suggestions from critical conversations is a must. You cannot look at every Black person, person of color, African American, you can't look at them as if they're constantly playing the race card. Right. You have to be able to say, you know, I hear you, and I'm trying to look at it from your point of view. Yes,
that's so critical. You know, it's essential. And I think these critical conversations need to happen more often. And to add to that, you know, I had this article that said create a district-wide priority to retain and support teachers and educational staff of color, you know, and organize these race-based advisory teams, you know, and then to invest in the recruitment and preparation of these. It's a long-term strategy. It's not just a 1-year strategy. It's a 5-year, 10-year strategy that these schools need to implement. So I think that is so essential, Rhonda. I want to talk a little bit about your work now. You are now the principal of the Stewart Academy for girls.
I am.
And
yes,
that's so exciting. Can you tell us about what you've gotten into and what excites you most about this position?
Listen, here's the exciting part is, you know, when you're supposed to be there. It was March of this year, I found myself without a job. So I'm there. I just trying to find myself during that time. I applied for one job and I got that one job. And it was so great when I just saw the advertisement for it, because I was talking to my sons And they're like, Mom, that's you, little Black girls. And, that's you. And so to apply for one position and get it, first of all, that's where you're supposed to be. That. And just walking in there, I've yet to have my girls come to school yet because of the, COVID and all that. However, I do enrollment meetings for all of our new students. So I've gotten to meet probably, 25, 30 of them. It's the most amazing thing. I can't wait. I'm so excited about all the fantastic things that we can do with them. Because what I don't want them to be, I found myself to be a person that people say I speak out, but there were a lot of things I held in, I didn't speak up about, I didn't advocate for myself. And during the time from March until September, I had a lot of time to think, and I thought I would have done things differently. And what I want to do is empower these girls to have their own voice, to be advocates for themselves, to give them the tools that they can sit at the table. And just like, I forget which congressperson said it, if you're not invited to a seat at the table, bring your fold-up chair, because that is it.
Absolutely.
That's it. And I want to be able to have influence on them. I used to be in the high school realm where you get kids, ninth grade, they're kind of already there. They know what they want. They know what they don't want. They've been damaged. They've been made happy, whatever their situation is. But when you're talking about preschool through sixth grade, the impact that you can have on the rest of their schooling and life is just, it gives me goosebumps, like, oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. It's an exciting time for me.
Yes, and this school is such a pillar in the Toledo, Ohio community, and I know I have participated with other women at the onset, at the beginning of the school year, to cheer these young girls on, and I'm looking forward to. We couldn't do that this year, but I'm looking forward to us as women in the community really investing time into these young girls and being mentors and for them. So you mentioned utilizing your voice and being an advocate. I'm so pleased that you joined the Pivot and Rise Mastermind that we started back in June to become a Rise advocate. And for those of you who are listening on Facebook, I'm checking Facebook as I go. So for those of you who are listening in on Facebook, we are going to be launching a new cohort at the beginning of the year in January. But Rhonda, you went through the Pivot and Rise Mastermind to become a Rise advocate. We're asking women to pivot to their calling and to rise up to be the advocate for themselves and for others, and to advocate for the causes they believe in. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience from the class?
Listen, it was amazing. It was one of the best investments I've ever made in myself. So many times we're helping other people. Taking your class doesn't mean, oh, you're a weak woman, you're this, you're that. It means you want help in making sure that you can get your path straight, you can find yourself, and you can find your voice. And it was an amazing experience to share with other women and to be led by you, Diana, who, you're iconic. Everybody knows that. I hope everybody's read your book, In My Shoes. It's a great book. But to see successful women getting together and not acting like they're all together. I think that's so much of what we fear, is that somebody will see that we don't have it all together in the inside. Professionally, we might be on top, we're rocking it out. But then on the inside, we're having these experiences that are just breaking us down. And so to be able to navigate through your program and with you and the other ladies that were in it, it was so empowering. It's so empowering. And I actually went through like a depression for a minute, because all the things that I learned, you're like, I wish I knew that before. I wish I had this class 20 years ago. And so when you came up with having a new cohort start, that's why I hit up a lot of the young girls that are on my Facebook page. They're 20 somethings or early 30s. And I said, I wish I would have done this when I was your age. Invest in yourself. Yeah. And it was just a great, remarkable experience for me.
I so appreciate that, and even myself as the guide, there were things I learned because I was going through a whole bunch of stuff, and I was very transparent with you all to let you all know where I was. The community was amazing. And I so thank you for that, you diving in deep and coming out on the other side. So now that you're at the LOP Stewart Academy, you've had this new awakening, now you have even more ideas that
Yes.
you're thinking about, because guess what? We need to dream. We need to believe in ourselves. We need to know that there's much more that I believe God's put in every single one of us to do. And because you're leading young women, molding these minds, there's so much more. And I know so much more came out of you during our class. Tell us a little bit about some of those dreams that you have that are actually coming to life.
There are a lot, and I was all over the place. And what was great about the class is it helped to bring me in a lot. I think that there's several areas that I want to attack and I want to get with, but I'm going to be hosting classes, webinars for administrators, and we'll talk about things like that. How do you help your staff? How do you build relationships with your staff? How do you build relationships with your students? How do you manage your day? That is one aspect. But then on the other hand, I really, really, really want to speak in front of, with, and to other educators about what they can do to culturally shift their school community, to make it a place for just, I don't know, it's not just empowering one group, but making sure you don't ignore the group when you're saying we're treating everyone great, for making sure that people are doing the work, that they're doing the work. So I see myself doing lots of conferences, lots of speaking engagements to get people on board with where we need to be.
Yeah, I see that, and I don't see that as a possibility. I see that as a duty. You have so much to share. And I feel this is a message not only just for you, Rhonda, but for people out there, that we have so much to share, that it's our duty to share it. I mean, how awful would it be that we would leave this earth and not be able to share all of the gifts that we've been given, and with your amazing amount of experiences that so many people will benefit, so I just applaud you, and I want to encourage you to keep going. So I want to check the Facebook folks and see if anyone has any questions. We actually have, Sydney Harmon was a mentee of mine. She's now at Notre Dame Academy, and she is doing work, of course, in the Career Center. Hi, Sydney. Jonelle is here, and she's talking about, what it feels like, respect. And we have Deb Porter, Christy. You're such a great role model. So excited for you. And then we have Bing. All right, walk through handing adversity for your Black women educators who experience discrimination. Yes, I want to be able to say to you, Rhonda, that I so appreciate you, and I believe that your voice matters, and I believe that your voice is going to have a ripple effect in this Toledo community, but abroad. So before we leave, though, I want to be able to ask if anyone has any questions in the Facebook group. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask those questions. But before we kind of wind down, Rhonda, what else do you want to be able to share here in this space and talk about things that either have happened to you in your work, what's happening now, or what you would like to see for the future? Anything else you would like to share with us?
Just a message to women, especially women of color, about overcoming. It is huge. It's huge. We have to do the work all the time, and it is hard. It is hard. It's exhausting work. When you have places that you work and you have people come to you on a daily basis that you make relationships with, and they all say, "Oh, we love you. You're so great. You're so great. You're so great." And then they see the inequities. They see those, and they do nothing. I want people to know that they have to speak up for people. Good people need people to speak up for good people. So watching bad things happen to good people is not a good look for anyone. And as a person of color, as a Black female, be encouraged. And know you're not in it alone. You're not by yourself. It's our job and our duty to help out the next one. Every opportunity that you get is not a competition. There's plenty of room for everyone, but we have to make sure that we're embracing each other, holding each other up. And what I can say to you personally, Diana, you were my lifeline. And I owe you everything. I owe you my sanity. I owe you my peace. I owe you a lot, because when you talk about Black females feeling invisible, for the first time in over a decade, someone saw me. And I appreciate that. I sincerely, with every part of me, outside of my family who know things that happened to me, and outside of them and very few close friends, you see a very made up together person that is at Ohio State football games and having a great time and living her best life. And then they see, as you see, a person that comes home and gets in the bed every day for years because they are so beat down. And for you to see me and say, I'm going to stick around, when many don't. They see you for a minute and then they just kind of move on because they got to save their job, they got to worry about their family, and they got to worry about themselves. And for you to be a risk taker and an advocate and a speaker upper, you just have no idea the impact. And I want to be that for others.
Yeah, it is so important for everyone to really be, and I will use this term that's used a lot, an anti-racist.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just be a person that's an ally, because being an ally, I think an ally is good, but to say when you see something wrong, speak up, say something.
When you see something, say something.
Say something. Risk this idea of your own comfort, of your own comfort, either with your friends, your finances. It's so important for everyone in this era where we're talking about change that needs to happen from a policy, procedural perspective, in behavior. People need to speak up. And I really think that, as Black people, as people of color, we've been speaking up. You have spoke up, and I want to quote Bettina Love, and I love her work as, helping people to be these educators and to be anti-racist educators and to speak up and to agitate the situation, to get in good trouble, right?
Yeah.
We need to come together and we need to help one another. We need to stand up with one another for freedom, for justice, speak your truth in love, to do it in a manner that's going to try to bring about good change. So I want to encourage all of the people out there doing good work. Keep doing good work, because good things happen. And this is happening to this woman right here. Good things happen. Evil never never wins.
No.
So I just want to say thank you, Rhonda. Thank you so much for the work you're doing, that you'll continue to do. For those of you who are interested, we are going to continue talking to our Rise advocates through a series, through this Diana R. Patton Facebook page. I want to continue to be a light. I want to continue to be an encouragement to these professional women and women in general too, who are trying to utilize their voice and get the junk out of the way, the challenges and the adversities, to be that advocate. Now is the time. Now is the time where we all need to be advocates, more so than ever, and standing up for the right reasons. And then also too, if you're interested to get yourself in the registration, you can go to riseadvocates.com for the course, and then you can go to risewithdiana.com to get on our newsletter that we send out weekly, sometimes monthly, so that we can have you all get to know what's going on and how we can continue to encourage and inspire one another. Thank you so much, Rhonda. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. And I can't believe that I was chosen first in our group to be able to speak. So no, I thank you very much for the opportunity.
It's been great. And Angela Diane, who was on here, says hello. Oh my gosh, we got a lot. Can let me read these to these people? Jonelle, Rhonda, I lived in she says Moon Township.
Moon Township. You
That's
didn't see many people like me, did you?
You're going to have to have a conversation. Kanika Johnson, a great conversation, inspirational. T, yes, it's not a competition. There's room for everyone, she says. Oh, this is fantastic. You can read the comments when we're done. But again, thank you so much for this time. Please join us again. I will be advertising for the next Rise Advocates Your Voice Matters series. Thank you, Rhonda. Everyone, have a good night.
Thank you, you too.
Awesome.